Welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 344. I am your host, Lauren Gray, and it has been quite an adventurous week. Unfortunately, politically and on everyone's mind, of course, is what's happening in the Ukraine and the ramifications of that. Um, I'm trying to extol the tragedy of it. I don't mean to diminish it by not talking directly to it, but we're focused on hospitality marketing. We're not a political show, but the events unfolding do impact us. The topic I wanted to have today was not so directly related to the impact. We'll cover that in a little bit of a news discussion, and more so in our podcast, where we tend to focus on a little bit more of the current relevant news and impact this week. But the live show today, I wanted to talk a little bit more about as we work through the things that are being done in our day-to-day lives and the impacts, the variabilities that happen in our day-to-day business decisions and lives. We rely upon third parties. I'm one of them. Many clients hire me to do a tremendous amount of work and different work and diversities of work and so forth. And so third parties have been a stopgap in some cases and a full service provider in others where they don't internalize things. And we're just going to use them as a lump sum saying agencies. Not everybody's an agency. I'm not an agency. We're a collective of services and so forth, but we're not an agency. But we function very much like agencies do. So the topic today is when it comes to agencies, what falls off the plate? And what I mean by this is having had ownership in an agency and working with agencies when I was strictly on the hospitality side, there was always this interpretation value that you had to have in regards to the answers, feedback, and solutions that are being provided from agencies. All too often, agencies tailor their responses of service based upon their scalability, their metrics, their monetization of what it is that they're servicing. Now, that's just truth in business. If you're asking me to build a skyscraper, I can't do it. So I'm least likely to build you a skyscraper or tell you that you should have a skyscraper because I wouldn't be the service provider. That's a traditional agency perspective. I think I represent an emerging solution process to a lot of places that are more about telling you best practice opportunities, even if they don't fall into the service spectrum of what I do. Reason why I was inspired by this topic and conversation today is that I had a client and a potential client ask me about doing some function, and it's I'm fully knowledgeable of the function, have done the function before many times, but it was a matter of price for them. They felt that the quoted prices that they were getting for this function to be done for them was abnormally high, and I agreed with them. It is high. I mentioned that they had a spectrum of being able to do it themselves and or have people do it with some interim gap of having other solutions fit it. And from that, an interesting response to it was nobody's ever told us that they can't do something. And I said, well, to be totally honest, I didn't say I couldn't do it. I just prefer not to and think that you have better options to have it done. And that kind of spurred this conversation for today is agencies often refer to answers and solutions that may not be your best answer or solution to the problem that you have, but simply because it fits into their service spectrum. What is the service spectrum? It's what they can do. What resources do they have? What knowledge base do they have? What facilities do they operate under? That means they can facilitate the solution they're giving to you. As the old adage goes, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, is very true in this circumstance. If all you have is certain resources, then every solution you have that's offered is related to those resources. And for that reason, I want to talk a little bit about how, as a business operator in hospitality, you need to reevaluate your relationships with your third parties. Quantify exactly what their spectrum of services are. Don't assume it. Don't have it implied to you, but really talk about boundaries. What is it that they can fully functionally do, and what is it that gets into the realm of they can contribute or influence to then the farther range, which means they can police and oversee to the other extreme point, what they just can't do or don't know about doing. Once you have that spectrum of perspective associated with your agencies, then you have a better sense of your dialogue with those agencies. Why is this important? Well, we have three solutions that are present for any hospitality industry right now when it comes to servicing their needs for any particular thing: internalization, third party, or mitigated services. What I mean by mitigated services, because internal bandwidth is an easy one. It's like you hire somebody to do it, and it's on your payroll. Third party, relatively easy. It's hiring somebody to do exactly the function you need to do that you didn't internalize. But mitigated services are you coordinating or having your third party coordinate the variety of exterior resources that are necessary to solve the issue that you have, the thing that you want to do. This may mean if you're looking at creating new photography for videography, that your agency doesn't do that. You don't feel the need to internalize somebody to do that. You don't have a perpetual demand, although I argue that point to some degree, um, for rich media. What you have is an immediate issue, an immediate need. You have no third party service profile that you have. So you can go out and find another third party that is dedicated to doing this, and the price is commensurate with the walking off and digging it off the shelf service. Or you have some mitigation that you can do. This is okay, you sit down with your agency. What do you guys know about photography, videography, rich media content that I need? They may be very fluent in it, they may be very knowledgeable about it, but they don't do it for a variety of reasons. Hardware, consistency of demand, whatever it is, they just don't offer it in their service repertoire, but they're familiar with it. They might even offer aspects of service that they can do with it if given it, but they don't do the actual production itself. So you have to mitigate these services. Outside of going out for another third party that is truly just dedicated to doing photography, videography, and so forth and so on, you might find that you can find somebody that can do the function, but you'll need somebody in expertise to know what to use the product for, how to tailor it to the size and dimensions you need for your ad set campaigns, and or size and dimensions you need for your website content media, added size and dimensions for promotional materials that you use. Um, so there's a halfway point. There's a mixed blend of how you can provide that service. Why do we bring all this up? Well, we are in a very adaptive mode in our industry, as most people are. 2 weeks ago, we didn't think gas prices would be at an all-time high. That has been a high for 40 years. And again, skipping the politics of all this as to who to wag a finger at, which we seem very fixated to finding out. It's really about the realities of our current economics and market and political spectrum. We have higher gas prices because no, we didn't convert everything over to wind power and thermal energy and nuclear energy and everything else. We rely on fossil fuels for all the reasons that we do. And for that reason, we have products and needs for fossil fuel. How does this impact us in our industry? Well, travel has two spectrums: necessary travel and discretionary travel. Necessary travel is business travel, corporate travel, and unfortunately, tragedy and things like this that require you to travel. And then discretionary travel is the leisure travel market. Just like in our industry, we have group travel and we have transient travel. And just like in our segmentations, we have corporate travel and we have non corporate travel. So the change in fuel prices affects several spectrums of our industry. We have the impact immediately of drive market travel. Okay. People not wanting to go too far because of the expense associated with it. There's the impact on other transportation services. Flights will go up in price, have gone up in price because of the additional fuel costs that they have to absorb in their price ticketing. Um, those are the very easy, transparent one to one relationships. Then you have the secondary relationships, and that is gas prices in combination with other living expenses that are going up. We know that we have inflationary pricing right now. We know that we have supply chain issues right now. We know that we have cost of goods issues right now. All of those things. We have rental increases. We have home ownership increases. All of that has a toll on the income use for individuals. Travel, when based on discretionary by its inherent definition, means there is a negative impact on people's ability, not necessarily desire aspirationally, but their ability to travel. For that reason, we have to modify how we operate as a business to accommodate our internal costs because we're being impacted by the same cost variables that everybody else have: cost of fuel, cost of labor, cost of goods, all of that stuff. In addition to our ability to price ourselves so that people can still partake in our product, room rates, restaurant prices, those things. So, in your ability to communicate with your guests, you need to be adaptive in cost of doing that, benefit reward of doing that, and how does that mix with the impact of what it can do. Let me explain more in a granular way. Many times in advertising and marketing that we do for online, Google, Facebook, and everything else, picture it as a wide, fast, big, deep river. Okay, there is always good amounts of volume of things. As you begin to isolate out what people are truly interested in, and how you relate to that true interest, like destination, hotel type, location, proximity to what they're interested in, and so forth, that wide and large amount of traffic begins to narrow and get smaller because you're talking about less people that are directly interested in what you would have to offer them. That is the progression of what most people refer to as a funnel. You have your discovery funnel, which is, what do I want to do? Then you have your educational funnel. Now that I've decided what I want to do, what do I need to understand to make decisions about it? And then you slowly get into your acquisition, or ZMOD, user moment transaction, where people make the decision to purchase. That's that funnel thing we talk about. And it's a narrowing of volume of people. In advertising, there's a good chance that you can always pay to get in front of people. That's not necessarily a hard thing to do. The difficult part is whether or not you're getting in front of the right people with the right offer and that you have the right product available for them. Because, as with most advertising campaigns, you can have good traffic. We could have thousands of people seeing our ad. It's not hard to put an ad up in front of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. But if you're not getting anybody interested in your product, where it's not resonating with them, that you're offering something they're interested, or offering uh, information that is helpful to them, they may even click on it, but they don't convert. They may be like, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." Click. Yeah, no, click. And they're gone. You spent the money to have them do that, but you didn't get the reward of having spent that money, that ROI of that. And that's where right now dynamic and variable marketing comes into play, where you have to make sure that you readjust your thresholds of what's considered acceptable traffic in combination with acceptable conversion. Um, Agencies rely on a lot of metrics depending upon their knowledge of their client. We have a variety, a spectrum of clients that we deal with. We have those that are very much embedded and very knowledgeable about exactly what we're doing, all the way up to the tell me the good numbers. Green's good, red's bad, arrow up good, arrow bad down. And it doesn't make them any less because they're very talented in what else they do. But the spectrum of their engagement of what we do for them is all over the board. So it's our responsibility as third party entities to tailor our data so that they have the information they need to create decisions that we need them to give us. How much do we spend? Um, how often do we spend it? What are we offering? And to be honestly able to tell them the pros and cons of the strategies. We should come to the table with what we think is the best initiatives based on what we currently know for what they currently need. And the key element of that statement is currently, because all too often agencies rely upon ignorance. It's, and I'm not trying to bash other agencies by saying that. If you have a disconnected uh, client, and or they've regulated the conversation down to a lesser non-authoritative person that really can't make the decisions, they're there to listen to the reports, then you've created extra links in the chain of communication. You're now talking to a non-decision maker. The non-decision maker may not be fully aware of what it is that they're listening to even know what they should come back to their people with on saying what they think should be done based on the recommendations of the agency that provided it. So what you have is a check mark. Yeah, I was on that call. Yeah. No, numbers look good. Traffic was good. Yeah, getting a lot of traffic. That's all you know what they remember. What they didn't remember is that the traffic didn't generate a lot of revenue. The expenses didn't warrant the returns. The options to what they should do to change that were never conveyed. So checkbox was on the meeting, just like you asked me. So don't get mad at me because I did what you asked me to do. And the company then begins to get mad at the agency because they're like, we're spending this money with you, but we're not just seeing the value of it anymore. And you as the agency are going, well, I'm conveying what we're doing and telling you that we should make these changes. And they're like, well, that's the first I'm hearing it, because an extra link in the chain was created. The worst of it is some agencies quickly realize that they're not talking to somebody that really matters. And from that, they don't really share what's really important. so as not to go over and create any sort of thing different than what they're already doing, which is optimizing their costs associated to their return. Let's dive a little into that a little bit. So agencies have the propensity of what's called least cost denominator. I've often said this to most future clients, potential clients, whatever. Ask the people that are pitching you their services if they themselves will be the facilitators of what they're offering, with their fingers on the keyboard, not supervising, not managing, not overseeing, not none of that. They're the actual doers. You will find, and I've never had this change, none of them can raise their hands because what you're being presented with is the A team, the excited, talented, creative, really the people that impress you. That's what they're there for, is to impress you that we have these resources, we're these people, that we're going to do all this stuff. When in fact, as soon as they get your contract and say, wow, I like these guys, they really seem this and like this and that one person, boy, they really know their stuff and so forth and so on. All of that looked great until it got into the process of logistics. So you sign the contract, agency comes back, and they create the initial whatever they offered. Okay. And there may have been participation with those people because they were the fresh in mind first person contact that you had with them. They convey that data to their internal structure that's really going to be doing the facilitation of this. But this is where it begins to cascade down. Do you need the next level down supervisor to be constantly doing the work? Of course not. They're very expensive. Same too with the first person that showed up in your room when they were doing the pitch. They're very expensive. The time that they spend on your project is a high cost item for the agency. Their salaries are higher than other people's salaries. Why? Because they're on top of the food file. The people next below them, same thing. They're very expensive. So, how far down in the cost funnel can we push a lot of the functions we sold this client to? A lot of the work that they talked about is pretty much ditch digging stuff. It's keyword metrics, finding organic content, stabilize consistent performance on platforms like social media where they're posting things and so forth. But you're not getting those people that were in front of you. You're getting the least common denominator, usually the junior grade or new into that was hired because they had skill set or were hired and taught what exactly they need. This creates another problem, and that is that person only knows the thing that they were taught. They don't understand the impact of it to other things. They see themselves in a silo. They see themselves in their own little bubble. That what they do is because they were told to do it, not because of what it does, but what they were told to do. So there is no accountability to when it doesn't do what they said it to do because they're off the hook, so to speak, internally in their agency because they did what they were asked to do. The person above them also has a mea culpa because they were told to disseminate this work into the workforce to the least cost denominator. So they're off the hook. The supervisor above them was basically following the guidelines that we can't have this too expensive. We promised this, which is this much work, and we are getting this much money, which is what we got signed as a contract. So the more we can make it a small cost, the more profit we get off of what we have as a signed contract. So you can't get mad at them for having done what they were structured to do, which is diminish it down to the least cost denominator. And you can't truly get mad at the person that pitched it because they never promised they were the ones going to do it. They promised they were going to be a part of what was being done. And them supervising it, they see it, but they may see things that should be done, but they know infrastructurally they can't really tell the least cost denominator to do something they're not educated to doing. So what does this all mean to you as the client? It means you get what you pay for. Actually, you get less than what you pay for. You get a rigidity in the sense that there's not a dynamic combination of communication with you. They're not coming to you with ideas. They're not coming to you with suggestions. They're not soliciting you with variations, and they're not recommending stuff that is outside their spectrum of service. Everything that they offer is only based on what they're able to provide, even though what you may need is that would be better is outside of the realm of service. This is why you have to have a very strong understanding of the spectrum of capabilities of your agency. You need to know what their core strengths are. You need to then know what their limitations are. Then you need to know what their influences are. And then you need to know the actual fine hard line that says, past this point, we don't know enough to influence it, and we don't know anything about it to do it, to facilitate it. And you may think, well, that's not really too bad considering if I'm hiring a third party marketing agency, I'm not going to go over and have them worry about furniture purchases. You're right in some ways. But as we're seeing now, everything has its own interconnected value relationships. What you do in one thing, kind of the old chaos theory, the wings of the butterfly make the hurricane, influence the hurricane on the other side of the world. What you do is influencing choices in marketing affect other things. More importantly, what you do in other things influence your marketing. I think best example I can give to mind is there's a very expensive, very nice resort, hotel casino in Las Vegas that put in their rooms these hard tablets. These looks like iPads or pads, tablets that control the room. And at the time, it was a wonderful innovation on what to do in the room. You could just be on the side of your bed and tap the lights that you want on, and the air conditioning setting, and the music, and the TV on and off. It was great. Marketing ran with it. Marketing ran with it. Like, look at how cool we are. Look at all the stuff that you can do in the room. Look at how innovative we are. Look at how neat it is. And it was a great marketing tool for why we were different than everybody else, which was the purpose of that hardware. Here's the reality: technology changed. Hardware wore out. Things broke. What they were getting was very bad reviews on how useless the hardware was, how frayed the wires were, how it didn't work, and they had no switch on the wall to actually turn the lights on, and they had problems with the rooms, and it was a huge inconvenience, and the hardware was outdated, wasn't even being kept up to date, blah blah blah, so forth and so on. And marketing was still talking about it as being a new innovative product because that was the last message given to them. And because they were never talked back and forth saying, hey guys, it seems like we're getting a lot of feedback from reviews that this hardware isn't doing what it used to do or doesn't do it as well, and people are getting really mad at this. One, we should diminish our relationship with that conversation. We should not feature that so much. Secondly, you all need to know, understand. In other words, I have to give feedback back to them. It's like, you may not be noticing this, but we are. Here's information you need to act on. Either fix the system or get rid of the system or change the system or do something that you're not doing now, because this is beginning to hurt your business, because people are not wanting to come to you because of this problem that you have. That's active dialogue between an agency and a client. What happens is, let's not piss them off. Let's not get them upset. You know what? We're not in the hardware in your room business. We're in the marketing business. They told us to feature that they have this. We do what they say because they must know what they're doing. The problem is, a lot of people assume a lot of people know what they're doing, but that's the problem. They assume it. Everyone is wrong almost all the time, and they're right, hopefully more than that. We don't do things to purposely be wrong. We don't do something knowing it's the bad thing to do. Um, we think we're doing the right thing. Getting resources like your third party agencies, getting resources like your internal teams to communicate in a way that is honest and not blame finding is a huge element to that communication value of agencies. Agencies should be clear about their limitations. Agencies should be clear about why they're recommending things. Is it because they can do it, which means fast and efficient and cost savings because we already have a relationship with you? Great, say that, point it out. But also point out that there's other agencies or other entities or other services that might provide a value of service is worth consideration. That relationship with an agency is a trusting relationship that if I sat down, and that's what we aspire to do, if I sat down with a client and say, look, I don't do this, but I know this exists. And I'll be happy to mitigate conversations. I'll happy to be a resource for you to vet what it is. I'm oftentimes with clients are constantly helping them discover other services by being knowledgeable enough about it, where there may not be as much, where I can be that trusted liaison with them to listen to the pitches of other service organizations and say, you know what, they do have this value versus this value. This agency seems more combined with this. That insightfulness is a value proposition with agencies that they don't often exercise because they feel that if you're talking to another agency, you're cheating on them. And it's not. What you're looking for is when you sign a contract relationship with a client, it's a trusting relationship that you're providing a service of support. You're there to show what you can do and be clear about what you can't, and offering that. And when I say from our topic today about what falls off the plate, a lot of things don't get presented in front of clients because of two things: one, we don't offer it, or two, it opens the door for somebody else that can also displace us should they be found to be better at what we do than them. Every agency is amazingly excellent at things and not so good at other things. And agency relationships are hot and cold. I remember in particular when I was owner of an agency, partial owner of an agency, that we were struggling with the fact that our clients, certain clients at certain times, usually we begin to identify a certain time cycle where they became disillusioned with the services that we're offering, where they were pretending to be antagonistic about problems. They start turning into more of a squeaky wheel. Why is this? What is that? So forth and so on. And what we found was that they felt the trust factor with us shifted. They didn't trust us as much as they did when they first signed. And that came from the fact that our communications were based on what we both found interesting to bring up. We talked about positives, they had questions about negatives, two sides of a conversation. Because of that, because of the fact that transitions on both sides happen, we changed the account manager for them, someone that they really got to be intimate in the sense of collaboration with. Now they got promoted, which is the natural progression of things, to something else. They were really good, obviously, because they were good with this client, good with other clients. They got promoted to a higher role, which meant that they were less hands-on with particular clients. This client may have been one of them, that they lost that person, and the person that replaced them, they didn't feel comfortable with, or they felt distant from, or whatever it was. That was one thing. The other was they had a change in representation where they changed who it was, and that person was disconnected and non-knowledgeable, but they were the last person to say they didn't know it, because that would show weakness on their side if they didn't know what we were talking about. So they just played dumb, for lack of a better way of saying it, of, oh yeah, no, that makes sense to me, and then they didn't do what they were supposed to do on their side, and the company became disillusioned that things weren't being produced at a level that they were familiar with before. um, the other ways that we fixed some of these things was we created a third party within our organization, a non-connected client relationships person that dialogued with the clients as their advocate within our system. This handled a third portion to what I hadn't discussed, and that is brand familiarity. A lot of times, and this goes to when I work with clients, they're very upset with their tech stack, their PMS, CRM system, whatever it is. It's not what it is anymore. It's crap. It's this. It's that. It's so, what's happened is, and I stole this from a very good friend of mine who we were on the speaking circuit for many years, Bonnie Buckheiser, who referred to it as Xerox training. So they get a software system, CRM, PMS system, whatever, and they have a team or a person, lead person, go through the training process. Well, in any training process, you have about a 40% initial retention. For all the stuff that you've been trained on, you retain about 40% of it on a consistent basis, mainly dictated towards what you functionally use every day or regularly with. That's what you know the most about. But there's a good chunk of it that doesn't get remembered and or doesn't get used frequently enough to be remembered, and it gets forgotten. Anyway, that person is the expert in this platform because they were trained. What happens? You hire somebody new. That person teaches another person. But what are they teaching them? They're teaching them the 40% that they know, missing the 60% they don't. So that person now is trained, okay? And the first generation person may not be in that role anymore and or not even with the company anymore. Now this person becomes the expert, second generation. And that second generation person is now the authority and they teach somebody else. Well, that's 40% of 40%. Okay. So even more is forgotten and less is remembered. And the third generation person is now even lesser. And that now they're the authority. Now all of a sudden you're in there and you're working with them, and now you're getting the feedback of, well, this platform doesn't do that, or this platform, I don't know, but this doesn't work anymore. That, and you get these problems with the platform, and they think it's, throw the baby out and the bathwater. It's junk, it's terrible, whatever. And a lot of times the solution was just as much as saying, you know what, let's go back to school. Let's go back to learning what this platform is built to do, because there's always updates and revisions and versions. Did anybody keep up with the version? It's funny how everybody thinks somebody else is doing this when actually, in fact, nobody is. You think that the IT department keeps up with the updated versions of stuff. You may think that accounting keeps up with the billing of stuff based on accuracy, that they know what exactly the account was for. You think that uh, operations keeps up with knowing that there's this version versus this version. We're supposed to do this version now, or that, and then sometimes it gets kiboshed because it's a capital expense. Oh, that update version is going to cost us X thousands of dollars, and it gets buried and lost, and nobody even knew there was another version to be considered because they weren't of the food chain to actually have been told there was another version of this. Enter in the agency or person that's on the other side of that, and they think that you're aware of everything that they do when in fact you're not. And then add on top of it that the version that you're working, they're looking at it going, well, why are you such an old version? But I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to do what you're asking me to do. So it never comes up in conversation. So the idea of it is nobody's really being ultimately responsible or ownership of things like that, not asking those questions. So from this advocacy that we developed, this third person advocacy of talking with clients, these are the things that were discovered where we're talking with them is like, well, you're on version 2, we have version 6 now. Well, yeah, I don't know why we're not there. Or maybe they do know why. Well, that was really expensive to do, or whatever it is like that. And it's like, well, okay, if you want to do what you're saying to do, then you need at least this version to do it. Now, here's the negative aspect of this. Software providers, SaaS providers, and so forth purposely upgrade their versions to solicit more costs to you. So it's not like you're totally innocent. Oh, we're just trying to do the right thing is on one side of the conversation. No, both sides are playing to their strengths. If we grade up a version, we get to charge more again. If we do another version that does other services we know people have been asking for, we can charge them to do those things. When in fact, you should have just dang well offered it from the first get go. So neither side is clean, neither side is right. But the idea is that both sides want it to work. The provider service, the SaaS service or whatever, doesn't want you to go onto another platform. The client, the facility, the user of the platform doesn't always necessarily want to go through the expense of changing, plus the training requirement changing, plus possibly hardware changes and so forth on this. So they're willing to listen to what it would take to do the things. And what we found is sometimes where it's like, well, it's a price issue for something. Well, you know what? Let's do this. Let's get you upgraded and then disseminate over a period of time or something. That third party pushback, high altitude view of stuff can sometimes help tremendously with the perspective change of what is the best way to solve this. Now, I talked about SaaS services and software services as an example, but this relates to everything. Um, Everything about what an agency does in relationship to a client, it is based on what the client thinks they need, what the service provider feels that they need, and what they're capable of providing, and what is the best solution. So, 4 components to that process. Having an honest, truthful conversation with both sides. The agency should always be truthful with the client in saying what, based on what the client is saying is needed, and also the observations of the agency to say, wow, we're seeing this happen. You need to consider this. An open dialogue, a real dialogue is happening. And more importantly, and this is something we require of all of our clients, we have 3 reasons why we step away from a client. One is lack of investment in the sense of commitment. If the client begins to regulate our conversations down to non-decision makers or just in deference to saying we're going to do that monthly report, but I don't care who shows up to hear you talk about it, we say no. We're not here to work with clients that are engaged with what we're doing. That's number one. Two is trust. If trust is broken on either side, um, and it, um, the idea of the communication is critical. Commitment. I don't mind that we're no longer talking to the owner of a company or their CEO or their president or whatever. But whoever we're dealing with, we're looking for progressive decisions. This is the situation. We need this decision. If I'm talking to a person that has to defer to another person, I've already created a link in the chain I don't want. Secondly, it's up to like the old phone game you had, say one word to say something to one person, have it go down the list and see what it ends up as. Anytime you begin to add interpretation between you and the decision maker, there's a risk, a very high risk, that the communication isn't conveyed the way it was intended. And I say this from emails, I say this from anything. It gets lost. The intent gets lost. And also the ability to ask questions back gets lost because you may not understand it in its full meaning. You make a decision based on what you interpreted from it. The decision goes bad. You don't blame yourself. You blame the fact that the person wasn't clear in what they said. And the next thing you know, you have animosity to the agency, or the agency has animosity to you, in the sense that you feel like it's not going in the direction you intended when you first got together. And it creates tension. Tension creates defensiveness. Defensiveness creates the anger. I found it's not like a Star Wars Jedi master training person that leads to the dark side. It does, because what you're offering is the ability to openly communicate if you keep it honest. Made a mistake, here's the mistake. Here's the issue. This is what we can and can't do about it. This is what we're seeing. Are you seeing this too? Have you considered such and such? The client has to not be defensive either, because the agency being able to be interacted with the client um, has to realize that sometimes they don't look right all the time. Sometimes they have problems that even third party agencies can see, like, I'm having an issue with your person in this department. They don't seem to be aware of these things. Their decisions or their influence is not where we need it because they don't seem to understand the scope of what it is. That's a hard conversation to have with a client, but it's a truthful one in the sense that you have to make sure that you are doing what you said first, which is I'm always going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell you what we're seeing and how we're seeing this. I'm going to tell you the truth, what we can and cannot do. And I'm expecting you to tell me the truth of what you want us to do and what you think are really capable. Don't blow sunshine. And this is where, again, going back to our theme of the conversation today, things fall off the plate. You look for the path of least resistance. I much rather not talk about the bad to create that whole stirred pot kind of thing. I'm just going to feature all the good stuff so everybody's happy. We get off the call real quick and we're done. We don't have to worry about this conversation until a month later. Now, maybe by then we'll figure out what's going wrong. No, you need to go over and say, what is the heck going on? This is not what we expected. This is not what we plan on doing. This is not the way it's reacting. I call it forensic reporting, where you create the criteria of relationships you have. Say, okay, we're going to get together once a month. We're going to review everything that's going on and everything we plan on going on next forward. Sure. If you have a monthly and that's the only time you touch base, you're now forensically reporting. Well, 3 weeks ago, we took a dive on your ad set campaigns and they really stopped converting. And we didn't really know why. I just, and the client's sitting there going, why didn't you shut them off? Why, we burned X number of dollars because you said that they weren't working. Why'd you keep running the campaigns? Well, you gave us permission to run them and we did what you told us to do with the money you told us to do it with. Yeah, then the idea that it's working, and then the client gets mad at you as the agency for doing something silly like that, and the agency's going, "Hey, I just did what you told me to do." No, what they told you to do was be a good agency and to say, "Hey, look, this isn't working right. What's going on?" And having somebody in the agency, which is not the least cost denominator, but somebody that knows how to look at it and knows how to interpret it. They go, "Oh, look at this. The link is going to this, but it's popping up a code entry overlay. It shouldn't be popping a code linking overlay on it because we don't need it. It should be going from the offer ad that we had to the offered rate that the ad was reflecting directly. It shouldn't have to ask you for something that we're not providing, and or even as a way you just click through it and go for it. No, that creates a stumbling block. It doesn't work that way. Doing that early and having it corrected for, or bringing it to the client's attention and saying, "Hey, look, we had to pause this account because it started acting in a way that we didn't have wanted to do or expected it to do, and so now we're pausing the account to refer what it is." Another thing with performances, it's not to let a bad performing account continue on just because you have permission to do so. And then forensically report backwards saying, well, yeah, it really didn't generate what we wanted to do. It really took a dive about 3 weeks ago, blah, blah, blah. That's a forensic report. What you need is to say, yeah, it took a dive 3 weeks ago. We paused the account, broke it down, realized it was going to a link that was putting an overlay on it. We went and dove deeper, found out there was a set in your Synexus listing that popped that in. We took that out, reprioritized the rate that was to be offered, connected it back to the ad campaign, and relaunched it. It went back to producing itself. That's a much better conversation with a client to cover the fact that it took 2 or 3 days to do that. I mean, 2 or 3 days of not burning money you didn't need to. Yes, it lost 2 or 3 days of revenue, but you weren't the one that created the issue, but you were the one that solved it. That truth in dialogue between you and the client is critical, and it should be inspired from both sides. The client should just as much be willing to ask those type of questions as it is the agency or third party to be the one offering up suggestions for stuff. I bug the bejeebers out of my clients with, this has nothing to do with me, but this is what I'm noticing. You're not showing up well for this, and or your content on your website is outdated and stale. It's not worth that there. This is, you need to do this to it now. You need to add this data to it. We're seeing these trends that you might want to add into your processes. We're seeing these services that you might consider to make changes to what services you're currently running. That open, honest relationship with a client, that you're sharing that kind of data in such a way that benefits them. They may not act on all of it. They may say, we don't have the means to it, we don't have the finances for it, whatever. But that truth in showing that to them means that you're actively and honestly always looking to their benefit for whatever it may be. And it is not constrained by what your agency can offer. I have the benefit of saying that there's nothing we can't do. It's strange to say that because there's so many things that can be done. But the connected resources we have from where people work and what they do, and how many different resources we can pull in from all over the world globally, it is fun to say that no matter what you throw at us, we have a solution for it. We have a process for it, or we have a means to create a solution for it. But most importantly, I think the thing that endears our relationship with our clients is that they know truthfully, we're not trying to sell what we can do. We're there to do what we sold, which is be the most trusted, reliable third party influencing value to you as possible, to give you truthful insight, to be that trusted consultant that says, that sounds like a great plan. No, they sound like they're the ones that can do that stuff for you. We don't need to be doing that for you. I don't think we can do it as well as they can do it. They should be doing that. And that opens the door that sometimes you have to share space. We're not in this exclusive monogamy relationships with all of our clients. We're one of many. What we are is the trusted one that has this SEAL Team 6 perspective, which is we go in and fix things. This is the realm that we've chosen to pick, and not all agencies work on that level. So I'm just saying this is a contrast example where agencies that are stable, they're full spectrum in the sense that they offer all the provided services that a client necessarily needs, from paid to social, organic, whatever it is, imaging, OTT advertising, all the variations that are needed in the spectrum of what we do today adaptively. And they don't need um, the one-off kind of stuff because they're inclusive with everything. But with all things, sometimes you want another opinion or you want a third party to this. And we play nice with everyone in that sense. And there's agencies that are wonderful in the relationship. They're like, when we say, well, we need access to this, this, and this, we do audits, we do tons of audits for places. They just sometimes want to see the perspective of the services they're getting, the value proposition of what they're getting, and the variations to what they have, options to have for it, and so forth. There's a lot of agencies that are very professional and absolutely excellent. They're like, sure, here you go, take a look. We'd appreciate that because what usually ends up happening is when we come in and review things, we echo what they've been saying all along. And it's funny because we often get that. It goes back to an old commercial from way back. I mean, this goes back 15, 20 years maybe, where FedEx was selling their same day shipping or something like this. And it shows a meeting room. And no, actually, it wasn't that long. It was like 2008. Sorry, not that far back. Um, and it shows me, and the leader, the manager of the place is like, all right, people, I need answers. We got to start saving some costs on such and such, such and such. And the guy that works in the mailroom says, well, we can use FedEx and save 30% on our shipping costs. And nobody's paying attention to him. And the sales guy, the big sales guy goes, says, wait a minute, I have a thought. Let's go use FedEx and save 30% on our shipping. And he does his hand gestures over. Everyone's like, oh, that's great. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. You're so smart. And the mail guy looks at him and says, I just said the same thing. And the sales guy goes, yeah, but you didn't do this. Yeah, it's the idea of the messenger is the important catalyst to sometimes people listening. We've gone into many C-level meetings talking about what to do. And we've talked about this on another show about the dynamics of those meetings, who's really in charge versus who really is the authority, so forth and so on. And a lot of times, if you just listen to the feedback in the room, you'll quickly determine who's been trying to push something to solve but isn't being listened to. And you, from your research that's been asked by the client to review, you realize that's the best course of action, is what's being recommended literally by somebody else. Not for you to say, well, this is what we think and we've done this, is to begin to go over and give credit to the person that has had that insight all along and validate them, because now you have an ally, you have an advocate with you that isn't on your team, but it's in their organization. Okay. But most importantly, sometimes by you saying it, there's things like, holy crap, I've been saying that for 6 months and nobody's been listening to me. You walk in the door and 2 minutes later, everybody's slapping you on the back saying how brilliant you are. Giving them shared value and pointing to them and saying that this is a brilliant idea. This is exactly what we recommend. And it is, you should have been listening to them all along, kind of thing, endears you to the people that are the authorities in that organization, so that when you come up with another suggestion that nobody's come up with, they're already on your side. They're like, you know what? They already knew I was right and they agreed with me and made me look like this rock star I am. Okay. And now they're coming with another idea that I think is pretty good too. And I didn't think about it, but I'm all endorsing them because I want them around because they're being listened to by everybody else. This is the agency roles. This is the value of third party. This is the value of someone outside your organization coming to your organization. Because, two, and the other part to consider, that a client for an agency is one of, okay? And it may be their biggest client, and maybe their smallest client, but it's part of a whole or a whole portion of what they generate as revenue for their business. When somebody's on your payroll, there's a two-edged sword to this. One is you will never get a more dedicated and focused to the benefit of the company than somebody that's on your payroll. We say this persistently, that we can do it now, but we really would love to train somebody in your organization to be that person, to be the least the policeman, because they're always going to look out you for your best interest because your name's on the bottom of their paycheck. That's the good side. That's the side that's of high value for having internal people because they're dedicated to the company, only the company, for the company, so forth and so on. The negative is their reliance on their income, their quality of life, is based on acceptance of the person that signs their check. Sometimes it's hard for them to bring the statement of demand for not having any clothes to the very people that are feeding them. So a lot of times, don't rock the boat. It's something I don't want to risk my career with this company to do. I much rather have mediocrity than higher performance at the risk of creating an ire with somebody that I work with. I say this firsthand from when I was in C levels and so forth, and meetings and what have you. They were my business friends, but I never looked at them other than being compatriots in a meeting. It was like a Shark Tank. If you came with an unsupported idea, I would expect them to bash the bejeebers out of this because we're in front of our bosses or boss, and we're not out to hedge each other's sandboxes, but we're there because our bosses trusted us with our expertise. And if I came with a half baked idea, I would expect my peers to shred it to pieces because it was a half baked idea. Don't walk into those rooms with a weird thought or I'm not ready. It doesn't work. Agencies need to do the same. When they walk in, their boss is in front of them, the person that decides whether they still are connected to you contractually. Going in, you want to make sure that you have sustainable, supportable concepts and the validation of what your opinion is, just not a random, yeah, I'm thinking we should change everything to purple with polka dots because that's the new thing. Why is it the new thing? What data do you have to support that new thing? Why is this a reason for us to do that thing? On and on and on. So, third party, in comparison to the two contrasts I just did for internal, where the best benefit is the support because they're on the payroll. The negative is they don't want to rock the boat. Third parties, unfortunately, come into the conversations the same way. Do I really want to point out what they're doing wrong, or do I just want to cash the check they're sending? And that's where a lot of agencies fail. Is they're more worried about the check than they are about the purpose of why they get it. And when you can establish truth and honesty, I have pissed off royally clients because I told them what they didn't want to hear, and I was very specific about why I felt the way I did. And there were times I jeopardized our future relationship with them. And I looked at it this way: I would be better off telling them the truth and getting fired and walking out the door with my dignity than to lie to them and succumb and lose my honor for what I believe is the reason why I do this by telling them just what they want to hear or omitting what they don't want to hear. So, in your relationships with agencies, having honest dialogue that goes past the social hype handshakes and attaboys and chotskis and feel good fuzzies and happy Christmas packages of candy. I don't send gifts out to my clients. And I had one client one time ask me why. I said, because you're paying for it. It's not a gift. What by paying me for doing the services I do for you affords me the ability to send you a gift. And I base this on the fact of having been a recipient of tons of gifts in my time when I was in position of ownerships, where I was the person you wanted to pander to because I had the decision making process of whether we purchased product or not. I got tons of stuff over the holidays and so forth, and attaboys and feel goods and so forth. And I felt like I reached out and appreciated all of them, but even that got dulled after a while where I didn't really even send notes to people or maybe on a phone call say, hey, by the way, thanks for the gift, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, one time, one client, largest client we had at the time, I sent them this amazing Florida custom package. I went out, I don't know how much time I spent. I found different Florida-esque things and I put this all together and sent it as a Christmas package. This was early on in this current, what I do. And I sent it up to them. Never heard a word. About a month and a half, no, a month after that, about January-ish after Christmas, I did a trip up with them to go over and sit down with them face to face and go through stuff. And I went into the break room and the break that we had in our meeting, and I noticed some residual stuff that I had sent to them that was in the big pile for everybody to participate in. When you get the gift pack, you bring to the break room, and everybody in the office gets to participate in. And so I came back to the room. I said, "Oh, hey, I see some of the stuff I sent to you is still in the break room." Here's the answer I got. Really, that was you? Oh, whoa, thanks. Never again. It's because it's expected and or maybe it's not appreciated. But either way, I'd much rather be able to have a clear face with a client that says, look, what you're paying me to do is because of the services I'm providing, not because I get to wear fancy logo shirts and also send you gifts on the holidays. And I've actually steered away from clients that are like, well, I really appreciate when I get candy boxes and stuff like this. So you're leveraging your position with your company to receive benefits for that rather than worrying about the performance of the agency that's sending. So basically, if I was a crappy agency, if I just sent you enough junk, you'd still keep me around because you like it. That's how I read that. So understanding the purpose of your agency, understanding the reason that you have the relationship with your agency, understanding what their truth is to you as to how honest can they be to you. Do you discourage that from them, like don't tell me the bad, I want to know what you're doing about it. And again, every relationship doesn't have to be the same way. Some client relationships we have with us, they don't have time nor interest in the granular. Okay, they appreciate that if they ever ask it, we can offer it, but they don't want to know it. They do want green arrow up good, red arrow down bad. They just want to be able to have a sense of what it is because that's all they need to know from us. But then there are other clients that want to know the higher granularity of what exactly is being done so that they can understand their decisions that they need. And I think that that is trending more towards what's needed now because as each day, each week is different, as we've seen this week to the last week to the week before. Think of this: a little over 2 weeks ago, there were a lot more people alive in the Ukraine living what we consider to be normal lives. Where am I going to get my hair cut? Where I got to pick up groceries day, I go to a doctor's appointment, daycare, pet appointment, whatever. To where can I hide from being shot? Think about that. And 2 weeks ago, we are buying gas at $3.24 a gallon or whatever it was, and moaning about general stuff. And now it's over $4. And we're now looking at what the impact of what these changes are to our business, our cost of living, our cost of doing business, our ability to solicit business. We know right now that what's happening right now is impacting travel decisions right now for spring break cycle for places that benefit from spring break travel. March, kids out of school, kids out of college. What are they doing? It's a high demand for lots of different markets. How's that affecting it? Are they piling into one car because of gas prices? Are they still flying but not flying? Are they foregoing the trip? Are they changing their trip plans? Because gas prices is the only thing that's gone up. Our hotel rates have gone up. Cost of eating out has gone up. Cost to go to places because everybody's cost has been impacted by this. So how much money they spend is now a stronger criteria of what it is they're allowing themselves to do. And because of all the extra costs of cost of living, that amount of money that they have, that expendable income money that they have for discretionary travel, has been squeezed. There are certain markets that are still available, but you have even hesitancy from them. You have the retirement market that has more sustainable income because of their retirement investments, but that's even taking hits. So there might be a hesitancy for them. You have political turmoil, which might affect the interest of international travel right now, especially to Europe, perhaps, um, and elsewhere because of just the uncertainty principle. You still have COVID. We are still in a pandemic. It seems like it may have been forced out of the news because of current events, but it is still there. It's not at the impact level that it was. We see more positive comments about it, about mandates and masks and so forth. But we know that's going to have a political ramification as to, people accepting other people still wearing masks or not wearing masks, or places that are still requiring it that you find that some people find that they don't want to be required to wearing masks and the problems that that creates. We're a very angry society right now. And so all these factors are influencing your business decisions. More predominantly, how are you getting business? And so now more than ever, your relationship with the agency that you have or your internal team is critical for honest, open dialogue. what is working, what isn't working. How do we do what we do in a way that's most beneficial to us? How much money do we have available to them? A lot of companies still have the convoluted perspective that marketing dollars are a savable amount of money to compensate for operational expenses. When in fact, the only way to really solve operational expenses is to generate more top line revenue. A lot of times people will say, well, let's cut down on marketing expenses so that we have more optimization of our operating expenses below the top line revenue numbers. Problem is, less gas, less travel, less revenue fuel, less ability to spend money. You need gross income to have net spend. So that's a convoluted upside down perspective. I'm not saying spend frivolously, but spend smarter based on the results you get for your spend and less about the ones that are not that way, which requires an agency that is adaptive. It requires an agency that is very much present in watching the performances so that they pause campaigns that aren't being productive at a certain benchmark that is agreed to by the client and the agency. If it goes below this threshold, below 5 to 1, we pause it. It's not generating the revenue. It's costing us more to generate that revenue than the money provided from it. Law of diminishing return. So having those active, engaged conversations that are trusted, that are truthful, that talk about the spectrum of what could and should be done, even if it's not within the spectrum of service of the agency, is the key elements to your relationship going forward with any third party entity you work with. It also is a key element to your internal teams to be trusting that they can tell you you're not wearing clothes without jeopardizing their quality of life, standard of living, because you're saying, well, you're not a person I like working with, I'm going to take you off my payroll. They need to trust they can tell you the truth. And even if it's what they think is the truth and you can debunk it, to not hold them negatively perspective of, well, you told me, something that wasn't true or whatever. Take it for the fact that they were intently trying to make sure that they told you what they thought at the time that they thought it for the reasons they thought it. Don't ask people for opinions. Ask people for their opinions with proof. Don't ask them to have a negative impact without having a replacement for that negative impact. Those are the key elements of better dialogue between your internal teams and your agency relationships. So there we have it. We ran about an hour. Probably slightly repetitive in some ways, but also a little off the board and tangents and so forth. Marcia, thanks for listening in on me on the channel I have here, and I haven't even looked at who else was watching me on the other ones. I'll go back and see them later, obviously. I thank you all very much for the privilege of your time, as always. Um, Thoughts and prayers for those that are suffering through horrendous conditions right now in the Ukraine. It's not to be ignorant of people that live through tragedy every day around the world. This just is such an unfortunate, unnecessary thing that's happening right now. Um, do keep in mind that it's not a sitting back and watch. It's a participation requirement on everything we're doing for marketing, what have you, in addition to politics. So with that in mind, we will be doing a podcast today. We're going to talk a little bit about some tools and so forth, and a little bit more into the news impact about the adaptability and segmentations of demographics that you need to focus in on right now, based on what's currently happening right now for people that are traveling right now, and also short-term pickup for that, and potential long-term, and I say long-term being within 6 months, summertime traffic, as to what the potential ramifications of the summertime traffic cycle would be. Last year was a incredible hello wake up event that happened with people traveling in the summer, but this is the one that is of question mark for this year as well. So with that, you can always find us, of course, at hospitalitychannel.tv. We are on TV, Roku, Apple, Google, Amazon. Just look for Hospitality Channel. The live show, this one, is always free on the free side of that. If you want to dive more into more content, it's a subscription service on there, $4.99. We get you additional content and the wall, just like Netflix kind of thing. You can stop at any time, all that kind of stuff. So once again, my name is Loren Gray. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and I look forward to talking to you all next week.